I was sitting in my corner office, looking out at the city skyline when my phone buzzed. It was my mother, the woman who had not spoken to me in 13 years. Her voice was sweet, almost too sweet, as she asked how I was doing. But I knew better. I grew up in a rusted trailer in West Virginia, wearing torn clothes while my siblings got everything new. They abandoned me when I had nothing. Now that I built millions from scratch, suddenly they remembered I existed. Before I share what happened next, let me know where you are watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below. If this story speaks to you, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Stick with me until the end, because what my family did next, I still cannot believe it happened. My name is Brandon, and I want to take you back to where it all began. I was born in a small, forgotten town in West Virginia, the kind of place where dreams went to die and poverty was passed down like a family heirloom. Our home was a single wide trailer with rust eating through the walls and a roof that leaked every time it rained. The carpet smelled like mold, and in winter we could see our breath inside because the heating barely worked. My father, Gary, was a man who loved the bottle more than he ever loved his children. I have scattered memories of him, mostly of shouting and slamming doors. When I was 7 years old, he walked out one evening to buy cigarettes and never came back. No goodbye, no explanation. He simply vanished, leaving behind a wife and 3 kids who meant nothing to him. My mother, Linda, worked multiple jobs to keep us afloat. She cleaned houses during the day and waited tables at night. But here is the thing that took me years to understand. Despite how hard she worked, despite how little we had, she always made sure my older brother Derek and my older sister Stacy were taken care of first. I was the afterthought, the child she seemed to tolerate rather than love. Derek was 4 years older than me, and from the moment I could form memories, I knew he was the favorite. He got the new shoes while I wore his hand-me-downs until they fell apart. He got seconds at dinner while I learned to fill up on water to feel less hungry. Stacy was 2 years older, and she followed our mother's lead, treating me like I was invisible unless she needed someone to blame for something. I remember my 10th birthday like it was yesterday. I had been counting down the days, hoping that maybe, just maybe, this year would be different. I woke up early, my heart full of childish hope. But the day came and went, without a single acknowledgement. No cake, no presents, no happy birthday, just another ordinary day of being ignored. The week before, my mother had bought Derek a birthday cake with chocolate frosting and candles. She had invited the neighbors over. For me, there was nothing. The winter I turned 12 was the coldest on record. I remember shivering in a thin jacket with a torn sleeve, watching Derek walk to the bus stop in a brand new coat our mother had bought him. When I asked why I did not get one, she told me to stop complaining and be grateful for what I had. That night I cried myself to sleep, not from the cold, but from the realization that I would never be enough for her. There was a time I got really sick. I was burning up with fever, could barely lift my head off the pillow. I called out for my mother, begging her to take me to the doctor. She came to my door, looked at me with annoyance, and said I should drink some water and sleep it off. That same week, Stacy had a minor cold, and my mother kept her home from school, made her soup, and sat by her bedside. The message was clear. I was on my own. School was no escape. I was the poor kid with the dirty clothes and the empty lunchbox. Other kids sensed my vulnerability like sharks smell blood. I was pushed into lockers, called names, had my belongings stolen. One day I came home with a black eye and a split lip. I told my mother what happened, hoping for comfort, hoping she would defend me. Instead, she looked at me with cold eyes and said I must have done something to deserve it. By the time I was 15, I had stopped expecting anything from my family. I worked odd jobs after school, mowing lawns, shoveling snow, anything to save a little money. I studied hard, not because anyone encouraged me, but because I knew education was my only ticket out. I graduated high school a year early at 17 with grades good enough to make any parent proud. But my mother did not attend the ceremony. Neither did Derek or Stacy. A few days after graduation, my mother sat me down in the kitchen. Her face was hard, her voice matter-of-fact. She told me that once I turned 18, I was out. She was not going to feed another mouth, not going to carry dead weight. I was not surprised, but the words still cut deep. Derek was there leaning against the doorframe with a smirk on his face. He laughed and said I would never amount to anything, that I was a loser who would end up on the streets. Stacy stood behind him, silent as always, not defending me, not even meeting my eyes. 3 months before my 18th birthday, I made my decision. I packed everything I owned into a worn-out backpack. It was not much. a few clothes, a toothbrush, and $47 I had saved from my odd jobs. I did not say goodbye. I did not leave a note. I just walked out the front door of that rusted trailer, stepped onto the cracked pavement, and never looked back. As I walked away, I made a promise to myself. I would build a life worth living. I would prove them all wrong. And I would never, ever let anyone make me feel that small again. I arrived in Columbus, Ohio with nothing but my backpack and $47 to my name. The first few nights I slept on park benches, too proud to admit I was homeless, too scared to know what came next. Eventually I found a shelter downtown that offered a bed and a hot meal. I stayed there for 3 months, sharing a room with strangers who had their own stories of loss and survival. During the day, I worked any job I could find. I washed dishes at a diner for minimum wage, my hands cracked and bleeding from the hot water and harsh soap. I delivered pizzas on a borrowed bicycle, pedaling through rain and snow to earn a few dollars in tips. At night, I cleaned office buildings, pushing a mop across endless floors while everyone else slept. I was exhausted, but I refused to quit. One afternoon, I walked past a small auto repair shop on the east side of town. There was a help wanted sign in the window, and something told me to go inside. The owner was a man named Marcus, a 62-year-old mechanic with grease-stained hands and kind eyes. He looked me up and down, saw a skinny kid with desperation written all over his face, and asked if I knew anything about cars. I admitted I did not, but I was willing to learn. Marcus took a chance on me that day. He hired me as an apprentice, paying me barely enough to cover a room at a boarding house, but teaching me everything he knew. He showed me how to diagnose an engine by the sound it made, how to replace a transmission, how to treat customers with respect, even when they were difficult. More than that, he taught me about life. He told me that success was not about where you started, but about how hard you were willing to work to get where you wanted to go. I worked for Marcus for 4 years. I showed up early and stayed late. I took notes on everything he taught me. I read repair manuals in my free time, memorizing specifications and procedures. I saved every penny I could, eating cheap food and wearing the same clothes until they wore out. By the time I was 22, I had become one of the best mechanics in the shop. Then tragedy struck. Marcus had a heart attack one evening while closing up the garage. I was the one who found him lying on the concrete floor, his face pale and still. I called for help, but it was too late. He passed away at the hospital that night, and I lost the only person who had ever believed in me. A few weeks later, Marcus's lawyer contacted me. I learned that Marcus had no family, no children, no one to leave his belongings to. In his will, he had left me his old pickup truck and a handwritten letter. I still remember every word. He wrote that I had the heart of a fighter and the mind of a businessman. He told me not to waste my potential, not to let the world beat me down. He said he was proud of me and that I should never give up. I sold everything I owned except that truck and used my savings to start a mobile auto repair service. I printed cheap flyers and posted them all over town. I answered every call, no matter how small the job or how far I had to drive. I worked 7 days a week, 16 hours a day, building a reputation one customer at a time. Word spread. People appreciated that I was honest, that I charged fair prices, that I showed up when I said I would. Within 2 years, I had saved enough to rent a small garage of my own. I hired my first employee, a young kid who reminded me of myself and taught him the same way Marcus had taught me. Around this time, I noticed something changing in the auto industry. Electric vehicles were becoming more popular, but very few mechanics knew how to work on them. I saw an opportunity. I spent my nights studying, taking online courses, earning certifications in electric vehicle repair. I became one of the first certified electric vehicle mechanics in Ohio. Business exploded. Customers drove from hours away to bring their electric cars to my shop. I opened a second location, then a third. By the time I was 28, a large automotive company approached me with an offer to buy my business for $2.3 million. I turned them down. Instead, I took on investors and expanded even further. By 30 years old, I owned 12 garages across Ohio and neighboring states. My net worth exceeded $8 million. I bought a beautiful home in a quiet suburb, drove a nice car, and finally had financial security. I once thought impossible, but I never forgot where I came from. I still wore jeans and work boots. I still visited my shops regularly, getting my hands dirty alongside my employees. I thought the hard part was over. I thought I had finally escaped my past. I did not know that my family was about to come crashing back into my life. It was a Tuesday evening when my phone rang. I did not recognize the number, but something made me answer. The voice on the other end made my blood run cold. It was my mother, Linda. The same woman who had ignored me for my entire childhood, who had told me I was dead weight, who had not spoken a single word to me in 13 years. Her voice was different now. Soft, warm, almost loving. She called me her baby boy, said she had missed me terribly, said she had been thinking about me every single day. I did not know how to respond. Part of me wanted to hang up immediately. But another part, the part that was still that lonely little boy in the rusted trailer, wanted to believe her. I asked how she had found my number. She said she had seen an article about my business online, how her son had become a successful entrepreneur.